Hi everyone. Thank you for being here today. We're happy that you guys came to our meeting. Before we get into our guest speaker, I'm going to just go over a couple quick announcements. So first is grad cords for PRSSA. If you have not received them yet and you are attending the spring 2021 commencement ceremony and you are a dues paid member at the time of your graduation, then you're eligible to receive grad cords for your membership, and they can be picked up at the SOCM office, so the Social Science Building, School of Communication office, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Thursday and 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Friday. So make sure you get those before graduation. And also I want to give a quick shout out to our incoming e-board. Congratulations to our new president, Beth. Our incoming new vice president will be Ashlyn Lindsay. PR director, Lauren Chapman. Secretary will be Lauren Nye, and treasurer, Elvira Morales. So congratulations to our incoming e-board. I know you guys will do a great job next year. And I'm going to go ahead and just remind everyone that we are recording our meeting. So it will be up on YouTube probably early next week. So just if you want to turn your camera on, just remember we are recording. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest speaker. We're supposed to have two tonight. We're waiting on one and we're not sure what's going on, but we're going to proceed with the guest speaker we have with us right now. So I'll go ahead and introduce her. So give me 1 second. Let me pull up our little bio. Okay, so today, right now we have with us Jessica Schock. She is a public relations and communications professional with more than 5 years in the industry. She joined PRSA in 2018 and currently serves as the PRSA New Professionals Executive Committee blog co-chair. She has a background in the attractions industry and recently joined the Home Depot's Corporate Communications Story Lab team in 2020 to share diverse out-of-the-box storytelling for internal and external audiences. So welcome to our meeting. And I just want to quickly shout out, she was actually one of my interviewers for the internship that I'm going to be doing this summer with the Home Depot. So it's good to see her again. Yeah, so if you would maybe just want to share about what you do with the Home Depot, and that would be great. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, hi guys. Thank you for having me. Thank you for joining us. I know it's 6 o'clock where I am, so it's kind of at the end of the day, but it's so great to be here. I can't wait to hear all of your questions and your experiences. But I am from Home Depot corporate office, so I'm based in Atlanta, and I'm actually a part of the CCEA. So that's the Corporate Communications and External Affairs Department. And it's funny, back when we were in the office and it wasn't remote, we were on the 17th floor and it was split down the middle. So you had the external affairs and then you had corporate communications, and I am in corporate communications. So I am a senior specialist for the Story Lab, and that's just a fun way of saying that we get to do a lot of content that not a lot of other people get to do. We are working with so many teams. I have a monthly content meeting where I have over 100 people on the call, and it's probably one or two different people from the different teams throughout Home Depot corporate, even some from Home Depot Mexico and Home Depot Canada, who are saying, oh, this is what we have going on. And the whole point of that is my Story Lab team will then take that information. We'll take announcements. We'll hear about really cool associates. We'll hear about store promotions. We'll hear about sustainability initiatives. We'll hear about anything. And if we decide, okay, this is good for us, it's a great angle, we'll take it and run with it. And my team actually deals with our external corporate newsroom, which is built from scratch. And that's something that anyone can see. And we'll write a story that's either going to be for a prospective employee audience, it's going to be for a media audience, or it's just going to be something for maybe associates to dig into. But then we also have the My Apron audience, which is completely internal. You can't see it, but our 500,000 associates across the US can. And that would be stories that are specifically targeted for them. So no media is looking at this. So if I have an announcement, it's going to be, here's where you'll see it pop up in the store, or it'll be, here's a really cool associate spotlight that we want to share that maybe traditional media won't really take and run with, but the associates will love, they'll engage with it. It'll help kind of promote the culture and our values. So that's really what we deal with. I also am in a unique position where I deal with all the social media. So I'll be posting on the corporate news sites, the Home Depot Twitter, Home Depot Facebook. And of course, there are other teams that deal with the other sites like LinkedIn and all that. But we are making sure that everything is supported on those platforms. And that's what I do.
Awesome. That's really, really cool. So could you maybe tell us a little bit about your like journey to the Home Depot and what led you to the point in your career you are right now?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So I actually went to SCAD for writing, and it was a very, very small class because if you know SCAD, it's an art school. Surprisingly, or more obviously, not known for its writing. But for me, it was great because it touches on a lot of different disciplines. And after that, when I went to that art school, I really got involved in themed entertainment, and that's in the attractions industry realm. So when you go to a theme park or a family entertainment center or an aquarium or a museum, and you walk into what we call an immersive space, there's a lot of creative people and teams and thought that go into that. And I loved that. So I had originally wanted to get into the storyteller space, and I kind of fell into the PR space with my, fine arts degree. And it worked out. I really, really liked PR. I ended up being that person who would get to the park at 5 a.m. just to deal with media, to host some cool call-ins, to promote haunted attractions, to promote our new animals. And I've worked at a couple different theme parks, and I've also worked most recently at Fernbank Museum, which is how I ended up in Atlanta. So back in the theme park world, I started out as a communications associate at Disney. I was a Disney College Program kid, and I really got my leaders to trust me, and they went, "Oh, okay, we'll let you do this internal stuff," and that gave me a really good platform for me to move on in the PR aspect. And then I got my first job, really an office job where I'm sitting down, I have a computer. And that was at Wild Adventures Theme Park in South Georgia. And that was where I was a communications coordinator. And it was a 2-person team. It was me and the PR manager, and that was it. And that's really standard for the attractions industry. It's such a tiny, tiny team, but it's great for learning. Like, you learn anything and everything because there's no one else to do it. So from there, I went and worked at Fernbank Museum. And I was the PR manager, PR and promotions manager, which is a fancy way of saying I was the only PR person on staff. And I was part of the tiny, tiny marketing team. There was 3 other people, but it was a lot of fun and it was great. And I also got to do special events, which you'll find that for some reason, special events and PR are almost always linked. So even at Wild Adventures, I was somehow in charge of special events. So that's always a good time. But it's great because it lets you utilize it. You know what media will care about. You know how to get them there to help promote the event. So it all works out. But now I'm at Home Depot, and I am a senior specialist on the Story Lab team because probably my background is being that person who has to deal with all these different departments and has to get the word out. It was just perfect for the role that they needed to fill.
Awesome. That's really cool. So do you prefer, I'm just gonna ask this, what's the difference to you in working for such a large company like the Home Depot versus working at a smaller company organization, and which do you like better and why?
That's a really good question. There is actually quite a big difference. And I mean, I guess that's obvious, right? I went from working for this tiny, tiny museum based in this small little town that mostly is based on local patronage. So they're not really promoting even to the larger Atlanta. I found out that they weren't even really trying to get the tourism audience. They were just based on the local folks versus Home Depot, which is the biggest US retailer. And it's quite, quite a big difference who we're trying to target to and market to and all that. For me, the biggest difference I find is that Home Depot has the honest power to, it has like the manpower, our department is huge. We took up an entire floor to actually get our stories out there. It's not just that, you're pitching something and you're hoping it'll stick and maybe it'll work out. Maybe you've got the 2 reporters that you've got a really good connection with, and you know that they'll do this many stories for you during the year. At Home Depot, I'm the person who's being told, okay, we've got this announcement. And I'm like, oh, great. Like, let's do a story. And they're like, okay, great. Since you're going to be posting this story on the corporate newsroom, I'm going to be taking the link that you're going to be actually publishing it with, and I'm going to be sharing it with these 5 main media outlets. And they might be huge. It might be Bloomsbury, it might be Newsweek. And they're like, we're going to make sure that media can find your story because it'll give them extra details that they may not get in the virtual media event that we're doing. And just when I first started there, that blew my mind. Because I'm like, if I could arrange that at any of the theme parks I worked at, it would have been gold. It would have been amazing. And it's just the staff they have, the connections they have. It's, if someone leaves and then another person joins, you don't lose it where you might at a smaller place where there's only one person ever in the role. You have a whole team who's keeping up with that contact. And when you get a new person in to fill the role, they're going, okay, great. You need to make best friends with this person. They need you to make sure they have all the information that they need. And they'll be coming to you asking for that information because you're such a big company. They want to make sure they get the scoop on this. So honestly, the manpower is fantastic. Personally, when you have a smaller park, you get to do a lot more of what you want to do, or not just a smaller park, but a smaller business. And what I mean by that is, if I wanted to pitch something to media and I wanted to highlight this specific thing and I wanted it to be this media day and I wanted the event to go like this, that's all on me. So not only do I have to make sure it all works, but if it works, it went the way that I wanted it to go. Versus where you're a part of a much larger organization, you really are collaborating with a lot of people. Like, communication remains the key. If I find out about something late, I may not be able to get my corporate newsroom site updated with the story in time to help out your media. And I mean, that goes both ways. So there's definitely pros and cons for both. It's really what you prefer. I will say that working at the corporate level, I find that things are a lot more normal. If I want to be done by 5 o'clock, I can be done by 5 o'clock, either because I have a team who can pick up the slack if something else happens, or because we do have things so well oiled that nothing is going to pop up on us. Versus maybe I get a call at 7 o'clock when I'm the only person on staff because something crazy has happened and we need to figure out who to contact to make it better.
I have a question. So this is kind of unrelated, but for as well as as far as interviews go, what do you recommend, like when you're starting out your interview for PR position? What do you do?
That's a really good question. So I have interviewed at quite a few different places now. You really want to do your research, because when you're meeting with these people, I mean, you're probably going to have that initial phone interview with HR, and they're just going to make sure that things check out and you are who you say you are, and then you're moving along in the process. And then you're going to either sit down in front of real people or in front of a camera on a computer, and you're going to have to sell yourself to people who are used to selling to the media. I don't say that to scare you. I just want to make sure you know you need to do your research. If you don't know your research, they will know. And Jamie, I don't know if you experienced this too much when we interviewed you, but I mean, I have interviewed, since I've been there now, people who are going to join my team full time. I've interviewed people who are going to be interns. I've interviewed people who are going to be working on other teams, and we're supposed to figure out, okay, are they going to work well with us? And we're going to ask you anything and everything from company values to, oh, you want to be a writer? What was your favorite thing that you read about the Home Depot lately? Who was the reporter? Oh, you've checked out our corporate newsroom site. What was your favorite story? Oh, do you have any writing samples similar to this? Like, they will grill you, and they're going to be nice about it. Of course, they're going to be super friendly because they're PR, but just your research is the most important thing. For me personally, you need to make sure your resume is good. I don't want to see any misspellings, because we will have people who interview really well and they might have the one misspelling, and we're like, okay, that's fine. But that does affect people. Like, I'll be having a talk and say, oh yeah, we're going to interview this person tomorrow. And they're like, oh, did you see that they misspelled this? And it's like, yeah. And people notice that and they'll talk about it. Again, not to scare you. It may not actually affect the outcome. We've still hired people despite that, because everyone makes mistakes. But when you are saying you want to be a writer and a storyteller, which is what PR is, you need to make sure you've got your stuff down pat.
Kind of going off of the resume, unless anybody else has another question, I'm sorry, but going off of the resume thing, I'm looking at Jamie over there. So I know that some people make a Canva resume. And is that, when you see that, is that more like creative, and or are you just kind of like, meh, just looking at the typos and the content? But yeah.
Did you say Canva resume, like a graphic resume?
Yes. Yeah, like one of my professors asked me to do a Canva resume because apparently sometimes it's more compelling for somebody. But yeah, have you seen any Canva resumes go past you, or is it?
So I've seen a few. And when I say a few, I mean, I've seen more of like the hybrids, where maybe you'll have the traditional stuff listed with the bullet points, but then you'll see like the pie graph off to the side, or you'll see that they did something special with their name. I have a few opinions about that because I went to art school and I was surrounded by people in art professions who were trying to make their resumes as creative and artistic as possible. What I have personally learned is that you need to get past the computer when you apply. That means that you need to make sure your resume somehow has it. So if a computer program is searching for the keywords that were in the job description, they need to also be able to pull up in that computer and send you to a real person, because otherwise you might just get stopped at the computer. And I know that sucks, but it's the world we live in. Going off of that even further, I have found that only the people, let's say there's a graphic designer, only a graphic designer who turns in an artistic resume is going to be given props for that artistic resume. I have seen people who have turned in writing samples and they tried to be more artsy with it than not. And it can actually blow back on you, where let's say that you created a fun graphic and maybe it's not the best and you actually don't have good skills in that area, but your writing is fantastic, but the graphic can distract from the writing, because then the interviewers are going to look at it and think, what's their judgment for them to turn this in? And honestly, it's fine if you want to say, you know, on your resume, beginner, well, maybe not beginner, but you want to say like, these are the things that I'm comfortable in. And then from there, you can leave it up to the employer to ask you, how do you feel about this? And then you can say, oh, I've played around with it. But sometimes it can have a negative effect if you try to show them something. And when you're on their team and they want you to try your best and they're willing to support you and give you help, if you do something like that, they'll be like, oh, thank you for trying, versus they have no idea who you are. You're turning in something, maybe it doesn't work, and you're not there to explain it. Other than that, I would say for me as a writer, I have the most boring resume on the market. And so far it's worked for me. Like, it's gotten me most jobs. And I make sure that it has the searchability. Every time there's a job that I'm trying to apply to, I'm pulling keywords from that job description and putting it into my resume. And that's really the best you can do.
Thanks, Jessica.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Before we get on to our next question, I just wanted to take a moment to introduce our other guest speaker. We had a few technical difficulties, but we're so happy that she's here with us. So today we have Ms. Shawn Smith, and I'm going to just read her little bio real quick, and then we can get on to our questions. So Shawn Smith has served in senior communication roles with Warner Media and the Walt Disney Company, developing multi-million-dollar campaigns for global franchises. Shawn is currently the Director of Public Relations with Warner Media Consumer Products, developing strategic communications campaigns for products inspired by DC franchises, including Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, in addition to creating global PR campaigns for properties in Warner Media's animation and horror portfolio. In 2019, Shawn became the first ever African-American president of the Public Relations Society of America, Los Angeles chapter, while entering her 5th year as president of the Black Public Relations Society of Los Angeles. So I wanted to just give a big welcome to Shawn Smith. And if you want to just maybe share a little bit and expand on what I just introduced you with and tell us a little bit about your career, and then we'll get back into the questions.
Always that mute button. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here. So I started my career in journalism, actually. I was a writer for a newspaper. And then I transitioned into PR. After a couple of years, I just knew that I didn't want to be a journalist long term, which I went into it thinking that I would be. So I transitioned into PR, and I worked at a couple of PR agencies. And then I transitioned into a big agency. So I worked at Rogers & Cowan in their film and TV division for a couple of years. And then I felt like I was ready to move on to an in-house role. And so I targeted a few companies that I was really interested in, and Disney was. And so I pretty much applied for every role that I was like even remotely qualified for, and until someone called me. So finally a recruiter called me, and I worked in the consumer products division for about 8 years. And then I went on to work in at the enterprise level. I was the diversity inclusion communications lead for the company for my final year at Disney. Then I went on to MGA Entertainment. It's a toy company. It's one of the largest toy companies, privately owned toy companies in the country, and their like claim to fame is Bratz dolls. But I launched the campaign for their second claim to fame, which was LOL Surprise, which is an toy that if you have any kids in your life that are like 7, they probably know all about that life. So I was there for about a year, and I've been at Warner Brothers for 3 years now. So managing consumer products campaigns for the DC properties animation, which is Looney Tunes and like Hanna-Barbera properties, and also our horror properties. So yeah, that's the abbreviated version of my career.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. And so we were just jumping into questions. We'll have questions from all of our members whenever anyone has one. So I think first question would be, and this is going to be to both of our guests. As we graduate in college and, we're looking at future jobs, internships, what are some like certifications and also maybe some like just tools for the industry that you recommend that we familiarize ourselves with?
So certifications, I don't know that will set you apart from any other candidate. I think that having previous internship experience is always a plus. And then other things that you should familiarize yourself with, I think, is the ways that social media and PR intersect. All of those things are so integrated nowadays. It wasn't that way previously when I first started in my career. So I think also looking at it from, as a practitioner. So not just like looking at TikTok or Twitter or whatever platform just for the fun of it, but look at how brands are using those platforms. I think that for younger professionals and that are entering the industry, I think that's something that is native to your generation. And if you find a way connected to the job that you're applying for and really like be thoughtful about how those platforms are being utilized, I think that that's something that's valuable in the industry today and could set you apart from other potential candidates.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Anything social media you can look at and learn from can get you a leg up on the competition. I've worked at places where people have had to learn social media because they didn't grow up with it. And sometimes you can tell where they're not as natural with it. And honestly, you'll find as you do internships that usually we're going to ask the interns, what would you suggest? What would you do here? What's your perspective? And we really do want to know. For certifications, I kind of agree. Like there's not really much that stands out for PR except for the APR, which you're not really going to be able to go after until you're 5 years in. For me, with my background in attractions, I was a part of an organization called IAPA, which is the International Association. Sorry, I just said that wrong. The International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions. And they had a certification, and that made me stand out in that industry, but not so much for PR. I will say that knowing your AP style is going to set you so far apart.
Yeah, I was going to add to that too. If you feel like you need to kind of sharpen your writing skills, I would say take a course like UCLA has, extension classes. Take a course that teaches you AP style or how to write press releases. I think that writing, having strong is super important and valuable.
That darn AP style book that we had to buy every year. Oh my goodness.
Seriously, Jamie.
Well, I will say, in my own profession, we have a digital subscription and I can do the search and it is really easy to double check things, especially when another team is telling you, no, AP style says this, and you need to back yourself up.
That's good to know. I like a digital version always. I think my next question, and then we'll open it up to our group members, but is what's like your favorite campaign or most memorable like project that you've worked on and why?
This question is always hard because I've had some really great ones. Most recently at Warner Brothers, we celebrated Batman's 80th anniversary in 2019, which was a lot of work, but a lot of fun. We kicked it off with at South by Southwest, where we had the bat signal shine on the lake at Congress Bridge. And that's the bridge known for having like a million bats fly from up under it, you know, every night. And then that campaign culminated with us shining the bat signal across the world. So we had it shining in different markets around the world. I was managing the LA experience, which was also a Batman run at downtown LA. Had like a whole activation with photo ops, the Batmobile, things like that. But that one was a lot of fun. And then while I was at Disney, I managed the PR campaign for the Disney store for 3 of my years at Disney. And I was able to travel around the country opening different Disney stores. And one of them was the opening of the Disney store at Times Square. And so I managed that campaign. It took us about 6 months to plan that event. And Bob Iger was there, Mayor Bloomberg was there, and we had a Disney parade in the center of Times Square. And so that's just like special to me because I get to see the store on TV every year during, New Year's Eve. And I just know like it makes me feel proud that it's like iconic and I had something to do with it.
That's so cool. For me, it was much more small scale. When I was working at Fernbank Museum, again, only PR person on staff, my second year there, it was coming up to be the 50th anniversary of the moon landing. And Fernbank Museum is a natural history museum. So I thought it made sense if we would really celebrate it. And again, I was in charge of special events. So I was like, there's going to be a special event for this. I worked it out in my budget to make room for it. I found people in the local community. There was a guy who built robots. He made a fully functioning R2-D2. I was like, that works. I found a little rocket league, which was full of veterans who built their own rockets, and they came out and they brought a gigantic one, and it was really cute. But the thing that made it really special was I was getting ready for it. We're about a month away and I've got a few things scheduled. And it's, everything's going normal. And then I find out from my VP, who found out from the CEO that they were actually going to finish a brand new exhibit ahead of time. And it was a permanent exhibit. So it's a really big deal that they're getting it done. They only do one of these probably every 2 or 3 years. And they went, oh, I see Jessica's already planning an event. We should make this the opening day. So suddenly I also had to deal with that, which is great. It was more reason for media to come out, and I did get media out. That was awesome. But it was suddenly having to change gears and make it not just about the 50th anniversary, but about this brand new exhibit that we had to suddenly order posters for. We had to, because they're a museum, they're a little old fashioned. We had to get postcards out to the pass holders so they would come out, because again, it's a local audience. It moved very, very quickly at that point, but it was a big success.
That's really crazy how, that just shows how plans can change really quickly and we have to sort of adapt and pivot. That's really cool. I think, Dorothy, do you have a question for our guest?
Yeah, no, I would love to know what's the most valuable lesson that you guys have learned throughout your career that has helped you have success in the industry?
Well, Jessica hit on one big one, is like being able to adapt, because like something always thrown at your way unexpectedly. But a previous boss once said to me, and he was a very like high-strung person, a very like anxious person, and he would yell sometimes. And so he was yelling at me about something, and he was questioning a decision I made. And I said, well, did this because of X, Y, and Z. And he's like, well, why didn't you just tell me that? And I'm like, well, I am telling you that, but when I tell you things, you yell at me. And then he calmed down and he said, well, you know, as long as when you make a decision, stand by your decision. And as long as you're able to explain why you made that decision, then stand. And so like, that was a big like moment for me, like throughout my career. Judgment. I believe that I'm a smart person. I believe that I'm a skilled and strategic communicator. And so when I make a decision, I have to stand by that decision. And if plans change or things change, that's fine. But being able to kind of back up why I'm making those decisions.
Yeah, that's so true. Like if you can, it's just like AP classes, guys. If you can explain it away, people will buy into it. Yeah, and they may change their minds because of it. For me, I think respect is really key. It kind of like what she was just talking about, where if I have a partner come to me and say, "Oh, I want to change this," and I'm like, "Oh, that kind of ruins my whole angle." You cannot let your own ego get in the way. You can't assume they're doing it just to make your life harder. You have to respect where they're coming from. You need to listen to them. And more than anything, collaboration is key. I have so many people, especially writers. I know, like, we're introverts. We don't really want to talk to other people. We just want to do our thing and get done. But you're choosing a field that is all about communication. It's all about collaboration. You need to get the cool quote from this guy who has maybe never had to reach out to someone in your level before. And suddenly you're calling from corporate going, "Hey, I'd love to do a story. Here's some examples of some other stories that I've done. Please let me tell your story." And just really try to work those partnerships, because you're going to be working with those people for as long as you're in that role. And you might come back to that company and work with them all over again.
Thank
That's
you.
really
Yeah, no,
good.
that's insightful.
Yeah, do we have any other questions from our members that before keep going?
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Beth.
So I really want to go into, I want to combine PR and event planning. I just love event planning too. And I heard, Jessica, that you were doing events, and then also Ms. Shawn, that you started campaigns and stuff like that. And I was wondering, what do you recommend is a really good area for me, like a niche area that I can go to? I'm sorry, there's a whole bunch of dogs over here, that I can apply for or look for that kind of the best of both worlds.
Jessica, sounds like
Okay.
your world.
So I'm thinking you need to look into tourism and the attractions industry. It's honestly a really good place to start, because you learn so many skills. And that is how I also fell into event planning. And it's funny how many attractions jobs, again, aquariums, theme parks, museums, all those fun things, how many of them on the PR job, it will say somewhere also, what is that, preferred, like 2 years of event planning. And even at Ferment Museum, there was a whole events department, and they made up 75% of the revenue of the museum, because they did all the weddings, they did all the birthdays. Yet somehow I got stuck with the marketing events because we shared the budget. So they just gave it to me. And then, I had to like tell that team, "Oh, I need it this night," kind of thing. So even then, in the world where I felt like, "Oh, should I be doing events?" There's a whole team that does events. You just naturally do it. So if you're interested in events and PR, that could be the spot for you. I will say that it's a great place to start. You can burn out really, really easy there, because in the attractions, it's tiny, tiny teams. Everybody wants something. It can be really tough to stick it out. If you look at bigger areas, like for example, in Atlanta, there's a place called the Football Hall of Fame, and it is sponsored by Chick-fil-A. So they have the budget to make sure that there's a nice big team. So you can look at things like that. There's world fairs you can work for. Tourism might be the place to go for you.
Thanks, Jessica. So, okay, name that. It's the World Football Hall of Fame?
Football Hall of Fame. Yep.
Not World, Football Hall of Fame. Okay.
Yep. And if you type in Atlanta, Georgia, it's going to pop right up for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a quick question for Jessica. So if you could describe like how the Story Lab team at Home Depot is different from what we typically may think of as, more external focused PR team. How does that differ, and what is it sort of like? What's its
Sure.
purpose at Home Depot?
Yeah, so to go back to what I was explaining about the floor back when we were not work from home, we have the external affairs over here, and then we have my team and all the other corporate communications teams on this side. On that side, you walk over there and it's like a completely different environment. Everyone's cubicle is lower. So it's, on my side, it's nice and private. On theirs, no, they are yelling to each other. It's go, go, go all the time. And they also have TVs everywhere, flat screen TVs on the walls, playing every kind of news station you can imagine. Like, they are tapped in hard to news because that is what they do. They are all about, what are people saying? How are we telling the story? What are our associates saying? Like, they are really, really tapped in. On my side of the floor, it's a little bit more relaxed. And it's much more like, that's the thing, like PR and communications are very, very different. I find that communications is kind of that gray area between PR and marketing. It sits in the middle. And it's like, okay, how can we take these two things and marry them and kind of share it? It's not that I'm putting something on the corporate newsroom site and I'm then pitching to a bunch of media. I'm putting it up knowing that the external affairs team is going to be doing all the pitching. I've just taken what they've given me. I've written a story for it. I've gotten some assets for it. Maybe I made an infographic for it. And then I'm also making sure my main audience is probably more internal. I'm sharing it on my Apron platform. I'm making sure that all the US associates have access to it. I'm sharing with our little media team, making sure that they can create a video out of it, because we do a video every 2 weeks that we put up for associates to view, because they don't have the time. They don't have the time to sit there and maybe read a few stories, but they do have the time to sit there and maybe watch a 1-minute video because they're on the clock. So it's really trying to make sure you know your audience. And for me, the audience, besides internal, it can be quite a few different things. For the newsroom site, I might do a story about 5 benefits you didn't know about working at the Home Depot. And the one target audience there is my prospective employee audience. That's people who I know are looking for a job. They found the corporate newsroom website. They're probably trying to figure out what's good about it. So for me, when you think of PR, you think of pitching media. And I did that for a while. And I realized I had better strengths elsewhere. And that's what I'm doing now, is I'm kind of just being a representative in the communications world.
Awesome. That sounds really, really cool. And thanks for sort of clarifying that, because there's so many different roles in PR and communications, and they always overlap, and it's hard to sort of differentiate sometimes. But that was really great to hear. I think my next question would be, I'm going to go back to the old standby question of, what's a typical day in your role? So if I was to pop into your, well, now work from home office, I guess, and what's some things you would be doing on any given day?
So a lot of meetings now, well, always, they're just, online now. A lot of writing emails to people, exchanging information and ideas. But I always answer this question with like the topics that I tick through in a day. And so that's more interesting than like what I'm actually doing tactically. So for example, right now I'm working on Space Jam, A New Legacy, the movie that's coming out this summer. LeBron James is the star of our new movie. And so I am working with all of our partners. So we have over 200, we call them licensees. So for example, today I was on the phone with Nike. I received an email from Spring Hill, which is LeBron James's company. He wore our Looney Tunes jersey today, and it's being picked up by press. So we were monitoring that. Bleacher Report is a part of Warner Media. Bleacher Report is a sports online site, but they're part of our company. So I had a call today with Bleacher Report and Nike, planning for what content Bleacher Report will, our new Nike Looney Tunes or Space Jam line, and working through all of that information. I received an email from our toy partner talking about the new Space Jam toy line. It's going to hit at Walmart on April 16th. So that's what I'm doing. I'm coordinating with external partners and coordinating with internal partners. I work really closely with our theatrical PR team. So I'm doing all of the product launches while they're doing all of the trailer releases, managing talent, who's gonna get LeBron his sneakers, who's gonna, all of that stuff. So it's a lot of collaboration and coordination for a big campaign like this. And then at the same time as that's happening in my world, we announced this year's Wonder Woman's 80th anniversary. So we announced National Women's Day last month. And so we're pitching, so we had made the initial announcement. Now we have to sustain it. So we're pitching a Wonder Woman product for Mother's Day gift. So I had a call with my agency today who's pitching that and giving them direction and advice. So those are the kind of things that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so my day-to-day is very, very similar, where it really depends on what's happening around me. It sounds like, Shawn, you're doing a lot more reacting or like proactive stuff. For me, I'm kind of getting thrown things and I'm moving and shaking as fast as I can. So for me, like this morning, I was up at 7:30 working on a report that needed to get done for metrics. And we did a lot of content for Women's History Month, and I was laying it out in bullet points. How many page views, how many impressions, what were people saying about it? And we're comparing that. And this month, we didn't do so much in the DEI space, but it is Earth Month. So we're doing a lot of sustainability content. So I know that at the end of this month, I'm going to be doing sustainability metrics and I'm going to be comparing and see what they look like. And they're not exactly, it's not really apples to apples, but we're trying to have a couple different priorities we focus on each month. So this month it's Earth Month. So I'll be looking at that, and especially at the end of the year. So I finished up a report this morning. I had a meeting with my Story Lab team where we all kind of talked about what we were working on, what people were thinking, anything they're stuck on, what are some pitches, did we get any other communication for this and this story? After that, we went into an all call with the larger department, which is over 100 people on the line. It's quite a lot. And then from there, I had some time where I could actually write, and I had to get an article done that needs to be sent for approval before Thursday so that it can be approved for next week publishing. And then I was double checking the URL on the corporate newsroom website because something was going wrong with it. And then I had a meeting about an internal newsletter that we're probably going to be taking over. And here's the objectives and here's the target audience. And I found out that we can't use this program for it because you have to actually click download pictures when that gets into an inbox. And we don't want that to happen because these are associates. They don't have the time. They may not have the technology. So it's just boom, boom, boom. It's all right. What are we going to fix today? And it is a lot of writing. Thank goodness this was at 6. I had some time to do some writing between 5 and 6 so I could get that done. But it is a lot of moving, but again, it's a lot of collaboration.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear how you're collaborating with the other teams, but you're also have so many different audiences. And I think for both of you guys, it's probably hard to sort of manage, employees or this group of our market or something like that. But that's great to hear how you guys do that. Let me see. I think Ashlyn had a question next, so we can go to her.
Yeah, so I have a question for Shawn. So your career is so interesting to me because I've always been so passionate about the entertainment industry in various ways. And through my whole life, I've always wanted to go into that in some way. And then I found PR and I love that. And so I was wondering if you have any tips for, getting into that industry, in entertainment PR, and then for working in that industry too.
Yeah, I think, I always recommend starting at an agency. I think it's just like boot camp for PR professionals. I happened to start, when I went to a big agency, Roger & Cowan, I was in the film and TV division. So that, initially probably connected me to entertainment before going into Disney. I think networking is super important and super valuable. I was president of 2 PR organizations, and you guys are a part of PRSSA. So that's good. So connect with people that are already doing entertainment related PR. To be quite honest with you, I don't consider myself a publicist, or I know I work at a studio now, worked at a studio before, but I'm not interacting with talent. I know that's like of interest to a lot of young professionals. And I did earlier in my career, like I did, managing red carpets for award shows and that kind of thing. And that is just not like, that's not my thing. Like I grew up in LA, probably like the celebrity aspect of it doesn't really like excite me in that way. And the stories that I hear from publicists on like the personalities that they have to deal with, that does not excite me either. But I say go for it and see if you like it. I do have friends that are publicists that I like watch the Oscars and I see my friends in the background on the red carpet, managing their clients. So I say and make those connections. If you go to an agency, try to be in the department that's like entertainment related. But networking is, especially in, LA, Hollywood, I think networking is super important too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And then quick side question. Did you like working at Rogers and Cowan as an agency?
So
Yeah.
the time that I was there, Rogers and Cowan was not a very diverse agency. I think agencies still have that issue today. And so again, like I think it was a boot camp. I learned a lot, but I think agencies have a lot of work to do as far as having more diverse. So I definitely had some while I was there.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go on to Dorothy. I think she has another question.
Hi, yeah, so this is for both of you. It's almost hack at this point, but COVID has changed communication a lot over the last year or so. So could you just speak a little bit on how your respective companies have kind of pivoted in their communication strategies, and now how are they pivoting once again as things are opening up? Like what's the strategy as we're kind of getting a little bit warmer to the idea of going back into the world with vaccines and stuff?
Want me to go? So last year, when COVID first hit, we were planning I think Wonder Woman 1984 was like scheduled to be released maybe a couple of months into COVID hitting. So of course that date shifted because theaters were closing down. So the date changed, I think. But for being in the consumer products division, it's not like you can stop, the shipment of toys and the fashion from hitting. So that was coming no matter what. Really shift those dates at that stage. And so that was, again, being a PR professional communicator, being able to adapt, because even though usually the content and the product go hand in hand, now we didn't have the film, but we still had to do PR around all of the collections that we had. Like we had a huge assortment from Revlon to toys with Mattel, like everything. And so we still had to do our job. And honestly, it was kind of touching because we just didn't know. But it ended up being fine because people were still buying things. I'm sure all of you, just like myself, I was like Amazon crazy, shopping for things that I didn't even need. And so people were still buying things. So it was still important for us to do our job and make people aware of the products that were out there. But then by the time the movie actually hit theaters on December 25th, like a lot of our products were being sold through. So, just being able to manage that and, keeping in close contact with my internal partners, who we call our category teams, that really understand like what products are at retail, what is sold out, where quantities are, and things like that, was really important. As a company, I'm sure you guys have probably saw last year that our CEO made the announcement that we were going to launch all of our movies this year on HBO Max and in theaters. It was like a big like industry shakeup, and people all had their opinions about that. So that's a big strategic change for us. And then we also launched last year a virtual experience that we call DC Fandom. And so it was like our version of Comic-Con, but virtually, because everything was pretty much shut down. So that was a big strategic change for us too, because usually we're participating in all of the cons. And that was super successful. Like over 22 million people attended DC Fandom in more than 200 companies. And so, big changes because of what the world was going through. But all in all, I think we were pretty successful in like navigating it all.
Yeah, so on my end, I joined the Home Depot in January 2020. I think it was January 8th. And then suddenly mid-March, March hits, you're starting to hear rumblings that things are getting a little weird. And I remember I had coworkers who were like, oh, it feels like a snow day. Like they're waiting to see if we're going to get some free time off, if they're going to send us home while this whole thing is being evaluated. And of course, I'm like, I'm not that lucky. I would love to avoid traffic for a week, but that's not going to happen. And then we got sent home and we were told, take your laptops, make sure you've got everything in case we do have to stay home for more than a few days. And now it's a year later. And sure enough, it went worse than I think anyone could have expected. And in our corporate building, if I remember right, it's over 7,000 people in that building. My team is on the 17th floor. So to even get to our office, get to our desk space, we have to ride an elevator. And I think that was what really pushed us to really shut down the building, because they're like, it's not in any way safe to allow people to be in these tiny little areas together, pushing all these buttons, sharing all these things. And it made the most sense to kind of close it down. On a content perspective, everything pumped the brakes. The way even it works now is I have a calendar that I work with, and I'm like, okay, this story is going that day, this story is going that day, even down to the hour I'm going to publish it, because maybe there's a press release that's kind of piggybacking off of. When this happened, I think for 2 months, all of my stories got scrapped. And I was able to utilize some of them and rework them for this year, if they were evergreen. But if they weren't, sorry, we lost them, all that work for nothing. And we found that a lot of other teams on the communication side kind of stopped because everyone's talking about COVID. And then the conversation also turned to, okay, how are we going to talk about COVID? Because if you don't talk about what your company's doing or how they feel or their perspective, the public will and media will. So it became that conversation really, really fast. We ended up launching a living news article on the corporate newsroom. And that was like my top story for months, where I would update the bullet points. I'd say, oh, hey, we've done this thing. When we required masks in the store, that got added to it. When we did some stuff for associates, we made it so that they could officially, if they had COVID, they could definitely take it off. We did that there. We made sure people could read about it. And the hits were insane. On the corporate newsroom site, I have very specific kind of small niche audiences, including the media who cares to check it out. And I mean, in a week or on 2 weeks on a story, if it does well, it's maybe hitting 20,000 views. My COVID story in 2 months, it had 500,000 views. And then within 6 months, I had 1 million views on it. And it is still climbing today. It's insane. I still update that thing. I just updated it, I think, 2 weeks ago. So as far as content, the perspective completely shifted. And the last recession we had, I wasn't with the company then, but there was a worry. Last time it was a housing crisis. Obviously, a home improvement retailer is not going to do so well. This time it went the opposite way. We probably had the best year we've ever had. And it's because people are stuck at home and they're fixing up their houses. So with me, now that things are a little bit more back to normal, this month, I'm focused on Earth Month. Last month, I was focused on Women's History Month. The month before that, it was Black History Month. We're also just trying to make sure we still talk about products. We're talking about announcements. We're talking about, flatbed distribution centers, how we're expanding the supply chain. But for a while there, it was very, very odd.
Well, thank you. That's very interesting for both of you.
Awesome. So before we wrap up, we just have a few minutes left. I want to get to our last question from our member. We have Carson had a question. So I want to get to that. Carson?
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Yeah, sorry, I'm driving, so I didn't want to turn my camera on. But I was just wondering, like, what is it, like, how do you guys think that things are gonna go back to, like,
I didn't get it.
once things go back after the vaccine and everything, do you guys think like the curbside is gonna go away? Things that people have made to adapt, or also another thing is like interactions with people. Like I know like customer service, like a lot of brands have gotten away with not doing customer service as much. What do you guys think about that? And then I have another question too.
I don't think I got it, the question. It's a little bit, did you guys hear what she asked?
I heard a little bit about curbside pickup. So Carson, we are doing. Oh.
Oh wait, sorry. I think it's my connection because, like I said, I'm driving. Cut now, so I can.
Yeah. I think.
Okay, can you hear me better?
Try talking again.
All right. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, it's really dragging out your words. It makes it hard to hear you.
Carson, I think I know what you said. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you said that once everything gets going back, do you think they're going to take away curbside and how people are going to be kind of responding to outreach again? Is that correct?
Yeah, and like also with customer service, like if because I know that's kind of gone away. Like no one wants to be in contact with anyone. So like, do you think we're gonna like a lot of those practices are gonna go back, or did you guys hear that?
Yes, that was much clearer.
Awesome.
Yeah, so Carson, I can jump into this from the Home Depot side. So curbside, it's a really funny story. We literally launched that in 2 weeks. We got an app developed and everything. We got that thing done. And it has really paid off. Personally, I can't speak for the company, but personally, I don't think they're going to do away with it. I think curbside is turning into the new drive-through. I think everybody likes it. It's super, super convenient. I think it would be a mistake to roll it back. As far as customer service goes, you're correct that there's still that concern about getting too close to a stranger. But from our perspective, we really care about the education of our associates. Last year, I did a story during hurricane season about how we truly believe and we make a point to make sure there's an expert in every aisle. We want someone to go into Home Depot and know how to build something. We want them to get help. We want them to know, oh, this is probably the best generator for your home. So for us, customer service will probably always be there, even if it looks a little bit different.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's good to know then. So I was also worried about that. But all right, thank you guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to our panelists that we had today. Before we go, I want to go ahead and take a group photo. We like to do a group screenshot with our guests. So if you want, go ahead and turn your camera on. So we're about to be taking that in just a second.
I see everybody playing with their hair and making sure it's in place.
Right.
You got a little strand out of place there, Henry. I'm kidding. Okay, y'all. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. PRSSA. Okay, got 3 shots.
Awesome. So thank you so much to Ms. Shawn and Ms. Jessica for being here today. It was awesome to hear about, your experiences working in the PR industry and at your respective companies. And thanks to all our members for being at our meeting today. We loved having everyone here.
Thank you both. We enjoyed it so much.
Thank you for having us. Good luck to everyone. Be safe.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
I
Good
appreciate
night,
it.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.